So, today we will discuss about the Television News Bulletin. Television News Bulletin is most important part of television because in the news channel we are habitual of watching different types of news bulletin, news show, news program or the debate show. But news bulletin is one of the most important part in any suppose you are in the morning band, evening band or night band. Most of the bulletins are based upon the news bulletins. Yeah, in certain time slot we are running the news show as well as news program, or mainly we are running the news program on Saturday and Sunday, but most of the time especially from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. we are running news bulletin, and in between, yes, 1 or 2 slot we are allocating for the purpose of program during the 1 p.m. or 1:30 p.m. So, it is depend upon the policy of the channel, but most of the time we are running the news bulletin. So, the news bulletin is the contribution of the different team members. So, in the process of producing the news bulletin, we are taking the help and the support of different team members, like the members from the camera unit, members from the PCI unit, members from the studio unit or the news desk and the anchor. So, we are taking help and support of different team members and the different team for the purpose of producing the news bulletin. So, I am just going to tell you the opening or the skeleton or the composition of the news bulletin. So, we are starting the news bulletin with the help of signature music or the with the help of opening montage or with the help of channel ID, that is called logo. So, we are using different types of channel ID or the opening montage for the purpose of starting the bulletin. After that we are running the headlines, then we are running the top stories, then we are running the sequence of a story or a story in a proper sequence with the help and the support of the rundown or the run order. Then we are also using commercial breaks after the gap of around or after the duration of around 9 or 9:30 minutes, because this is important for registering the TRP. And most of the time we are, or you are also watching the television, and most of the time you are realizing that every channel is taking the break at the same time. Every channel is opening the bulletin, closing the bulletin, taking the break at the same time. This is because of the game of the TRP. So, after that we also using some types of breaking news during the bulletin. Then we are also using obit or tailpiece story. Then we are also using segment based news stories and then news verticals. So, these are the different aspect of news bulletin. So, basically the whole news bulletin is divided into 3 different segments. So, the overall duration of the bulletin is 30 minutes, or we are running the bulletin in 30 minutes of slot. So, the duration of each and every slot is 30 minutes, it is a fixed time slot, and for that purpose we are dividing the whole bulletin into 3 different segments, and the duration of segments depends upon the number of advertisement allocated for any particular time slot. So, if we are running the bulletin, it means that it's mandatory for us to take the break or take the 2 breaks within a particular bulletin. So, our bulletin is divided into 3 segments, and duration of first segment is around 9 to 9:30 minutes. Why we are devoting or we are allocating 9 minutes or more than 9 minutes for the first segment? Because we are trying to ensure the maximum TRP. So, to register the TRP in a better way, we are devoting or allocating 9 minutes or in between 9 to 9:30 minutes so that we can register the TRP of our program in a better way. So, this is the purpose of allocating the duration of around 9 to 9:30 minutes for the purpose of first segment. And after that we are taking break. So, after the 9 minutes or the 9 or the duration of 9:30 we are taking the first break. Then we are coming back with certain sometimes we are taking the coming up, sometimes we are taking the dry break. So, it is depend upon the nature of the bulletin, and after that we are starting the second segment. But in between we are using, during the 9 minutes or 9:30 we are using different types of story. So, for the different types of story we are selecting the story on the basis of different parameters, just like as per the news value. Basically, as per the news value we are selecting the story, as per the importance we are selecting the story, as per the relevance we are selecting the story, or as per the national interest we are selecting the story. So, these are the certain criteria on the basis of these criteria we are trying to select the story for the news bulletin. And we are also deciding the format of the story. We are also deciding the format of the story on the basis of news value. Suppose the news value of a story is very down, very low. In that scenario, we are allocating the story, or we are deciding the format of a story accordingly. For the example, if the potential or the news value is very low, in that scenario we are allocating the story for the news ticker. In case of the any other story, if the relevance or the importance of the news value of any particular story is slightly better, in that scenario, yes, we are deciding or we are allocating the story for the purpose of anchor shot, anchor bite, or the anchor graphics. In the similar way, if the relevance or the importance or the news value of a story is slightly high, in that scenario we are recommending the story for the purpose of preparation of a news package. So, this is the criteria, and this is the parameter, and this is the process of selecting and deciding the format of any particular or any specific story for the news bulletin. In the news bulletin, we are selecting the story from different part of the country. So, this is the actual process of selecting, segregating, classifying and deciding the format of different story. And we are also trying to use one more parameter. For the example, if the story is hard in nature, if the story is soft in nature, if the story is related with a regional category, if the story is related with the national category, if the story is related with the international category, or if the story is related with the sports category, or the story is related with the entertainment category or the business category. So, on the basis of these categories, we are also trying to relate or also trying to prepare a proper sequence within the rundown, so that we can present the story in a proper sequence or in a proper meaningful way. So, these are the certain parameter we are applying to select, to segregate and to decide the format of the story, so that we can run the entire bulletin without any error, without any problem. And why we are doing such type of exercise? So that we can telecast the bulletin on our channel for the viewers in a more meaningful way, or without any error, or bulletin with more perfection, or bulletin in a to the point manner. So, these are the important point for preparing the news bulletin. Now, one more thing, in our news bulletin we are also using certain types of breaking news. We are also using, sometimes we are also using live input from any part of the country, or live input related with any kind of meeting within the parliament or within the PMO or within the any important meeting. So it's depend upon the nature of news. It's not mandatory to take the live or it's not mandatory to take the breaking news, but yes, as and when required, or suppose if there is a requirement, or if the nature of news is burning in nature, or nature of news is immediately or it's depend upon the, suppose it's immediate to release the news, then obviously we will take the breaking news. If the the nature of news is burning, in that scenario, yes, it's mandatory for the rundown producer and the producer of the bulletin to take the decision regarding the live inputs. So these are the certain parameters, and on the basis of that we are reshaping or we are redesigning the rundown to include or incorporate the breaking news or the live input in the news bulletin. So in the first segment, most of the time we are trying to include the story with high relevance, with high importance or the high news value. After that, in the second segment, we are trying to include the story from a different region, because as a national news channel, it's our responsibility to include the story from different part of the country, so that we can claim or we can say yes, we are the national news channel, and because of that we are including the story from different part of our nation, as well as we are including the story on the basis of the importance and the news value. So these are the certain criteria. After that, yes, one more thing, in the first segment normally we are trying to include 4 to 5 story. So we are using 3 news packages as well as 1 or 2 anchor shot, so that we can accommodate the maximum number of story which is important, relevant or burning in nature in the first segment. In the second segment, most of the time we are trying to include the story from different region, or we are trying to include the story from business sector, or from corporate, or sometimes we are trying to use the story from any particular region. So its selection of stories depend upon the criteria, and accordingly we are trying to include the around 3 to 4 story for the purpose of second segment. Now for the third segment, we are again trying to use around 2 to 3 minutes of duration. We are trying to use 2 to 3 minutes of duration for the purpose of third segment, and accordingly we are using around 2 story or sometimes 2 story and 1 anchor shot. So this is the composition of the news bulletin, and we are trying to accommodate the maximum number of story. So we are starting with the channel ID, or we are starting with the opening montage, and we are taking 2 breaks, one after around 9:30 minutes of duration, then again after the 4 to 5 minutes of duration, and then at the time of closing we are using the closing montage. So for the purpose of selection of a story, for the purpose of duration of a story, for the purpose of duration of the segment, and for the purpose of closing of the bulletin, each and everything is depends upon the total number of advertisement allocated for any particular time slot. If suppose the total number of advertisement allocated for any particular time slot is around 12 minutes, then it is mandatory for the producer to produce the news content of around 18 minutes. So these are the basic grammar of preparing the news content for any particular time slot. So all of you know that PCR is responsible for the purpose of telecasting the news content. In the similar way, MCR is responsible for telecasting of the ad content or management of the ad content, and accordingly both are exchanging the right of telecast. So before starting the preparation for the bulletin, it's mandatory for the producer of any particular time slot to take the feedback from the MCR about the duration of total number of advertisement for any particular time slot, and accordingly producer is preparing the news content for any particular time slot. So, the total number of content is depends upon the total number of advertisement allocated for the any particular time slot. Now, producers are producing the bulletin for any particular news any particular time slot as per the instruction or as per the guidelines of the channel, and as per the news angle of any particular issues, which point we will have to touch and which issues we will have to avoid during the bulletin or during the different story selected for a particular bulletin or a particular time slot. So, these are the certain parameter we are using to produce the bulletin. In the similar way, we are using different types of strategy or the planning for the purpose of presenting the news bulletin. For the example, if we are planning the news bulletin for the 100 news, if we are planning the bulletin for the fast and fact, or if we are planning the bulletin for the 10 am or 9:30 am bulletin. So, different types of news bulletin, we are using different types of story in a different manner with a suitable kind of a strategy. Most of the time during the 9:30 bulletin or the 10 am bulletin, we are facing crunch of new story or the fresh story. We are especially in the morning hour, we do not have the fresh story. So, most of the time we are trying to change the format of the story, or most of the time we are trying to take the live input, or we are trying to take the story from the some other sources like the news agency. So, in case if we do not have the fresh story in that scenario, or we have maximum number of bytes from different news agency. For the example, we are most of the time we are using the service of ANI or the PTI. So, if we do not have the suitable number of a story in that scenario, we sometimes we are using the back to back byte or window based byte or multiple window on the screen, and trying to use the sort, trying to use the byte, and trying to use the input of the reporters from any particular location or related with any particular story. So, these are the certain strategy we are using to present the content in a better manner or in a better way, so that nobody can raise the question of, on our channel that this channel is presenting the repeated kind of content in a different bulletin, or the content of this particular bulletin is almost similar just like the previous bulletin. So, to present the bulletin in a more meaningful way, we are using, sometimes we are changing the format, sometimes we are using the byte, sometimes we are using the live input, or sometimes we are using the service of our reporters, or interaction between the reporters on any particular issue, or interaction between the anchor and the reporters, or interaction with the guest and the anchor, or interaction between the anchor, reporter and the guest. So, we can produce the content in a more meaningful way, otherwise people will raise the question. So, these are the certain strategy. Apart from that, suppose we have the similar kind of content, but we will have to produce the bulletin in a fresh manner. So, it is a kind of challenge. In that scenario, sometimes we are trying to change the format of the story, or sometimes instead of opening with the story, we are trying to open the bulletin directly with the breaking news, or sometimes we are using full screen graphics, sometimes we are using half screen graphics and half screen shots, sometimes we are using half screen shots and half screen reporters input, or sometimes we are using one side anchor and one side reporter, in the center of the screen we are using the relevant kind of footage. Sometimes we are using half of the screen we are showing the graphics, and half of the screen we are showing the relevant kind of shots. So, we are with the help of such type of exercise, we are trying to show the whole screen in a more happening way, or trying to present the content in a more meaningful way. For the example, if suppose in the earlier bulletin we have presented the same content with the help of news package, but if we do not have the any fresh story in that scenario, in the next bulletin we will completely change the anchor link, completely change the format, and instead of using the byte or instead of using the news package, we will use the live input of reporter. Suppose if we do not have the time to prepare the package, we can take the live input of reporters as well as the interaction between the reporters and the anchors, or the reporter anchors and the guest, and we are also running the relevant or the suitable kind of shots to present the same story in a different way. So, these are the certain formula we are using to present the news content in a different way, or in a different shape with the help of same content, but with different kind of strategy. So, these are the certain parameters we are using for the purpose of preparing the news bulletin. One more thing, for the example, if there is a big news or hard news, or the news which is burning in nature, in that scenario we are trying to ensure the live input of more than 2 reporters from different location on the same issue. And if news is burning in nature, then we are not preferring or we are not going to run the news package. Instead of that, we are trying to manage the maximum number of reporters, we are trying to manage the maximum number of guests, and trying to ensure the more interaction, more breaking news or the information with the help of suitable kind of graphics, so that we can show each and everything in a live manner. So, these are the certain strategy we are using to redesign our bulletin in a better way, or in a live mode manner, so that people will feel the difference between the current bulletin and the previous bulletin. Nowadays, some channels are also using some different types of idea or the concept. For the example, they are sometimes they are running the short bite type of format. Sometimes they are running the top 10 news. Sometimes they are running the, or sometimes they are even the leading channels are also opening the bulletin with the top 10 bulletin, or sometimes they are opening the bulletin with the summary of the bulletin, or the summary of the different kind of story they are going to include into the bulletin. So, initially instead of running the headlines, they are running the summarized format of the news, and after that they are going to present the same summarized version of news in a different format, and formats depend upon the nature of news. So, if news is burning, they will present in a different way. If news is a special story, they will present the story in a more elaborated way, or they will allocate instead of 90 seconds, they will allocate more than 2 minutes or 3 minutes to any particular story. So, it depends upon the nature of a story. So, sometimes people are saying that what is the difference between the news bulletin and the news show or the news program. Basically, in the news bulletin, we are trying to include the different types of story in different format from across the country. In the news bulletin, we are using different types of story from different part of country or the nation with the help of different types of format. But in the news program, we are using one issue, or the whole program is based upon based on any particular issue, and in the program we are trying to use, or we are trying to present the different aspect of the same issue or the same story. In the bulletin, we are using different types of story, but in the program we are using one story and trying to elaborate and trying to explain the different aspect of that particular story. And why we are selecting one issue for the program, and why we are using different types of story in the bulletin? The reason is very simple. In the bulletin, we are selecting the news on the basis of certain parameters like the news value, like the importance, like the relevance, like the national interest. In the similar way, for the program, we are using or we are selecting any particular issue or any particular story which is burning in nature, or story with the huge impact, and because of that we are trying to elaborate the different aspect of a particular story. So, these are the basic difference between the news bulletin and the news program, or selecting the different types of story for the news bulletin and selecting the one particular story which is burning in nature for the purpose of news program. So, that is the reason most of the time we are telecasting the news program at or after 8 p.m. or mostly we are selecting such type of a story for the news program at 9 o'clock or the 9:30 because of the nature of the story or the burning nature of a story or the story with the huge impact. So, these are the certain things we are trying to incorporate in our news bulletin or the news program, and the decision of selecting the story for the news program or decision for selecting the story for news bulletin is shift in charge or the output in charge is taking such type of decision for selecting any particular story for any particular bulletin or any particular story for any specific program or any specific show. So, in the we are organizing, I mean the channels are organizing the daily meeting or the weekly meeting or the forward planning meeting. So, in different types of meeting they are taking the decision about the different types of show, program or the bulletin, and accordingly they are selecting the news story for the purpose of news bulletin or for the purpose of news program. Sometimes we are selecting the story or we are taking the immediately taking the decision to go for the live. Sometimes we are immediately taking the decision, yes, telecast this particular news for the purpose of breaking news or for the purpose of any particular bulletin or any particular format. So, all these things are depends upon the decision taken by the shift in charge, and accordingly shift in charge is communicating the same thing to the producer, and producer is communicating the same thing to the panel producer for the purpose of incorporating the any particular live input or any particular breaking news. So, this is the process of designing a bulletin or designing a program for the any particular time slot for any specific news channels. So, thank you.